Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to At America. At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn more about the United States. And hello, my name is Patricia Elizabeth. I'm one of the e-guide here, and it is such an honor for me to be MC for this event. First of all, allow me to extend our warmest greetings to our honorable speaker, moderator, distinguished guests, and all from the U.S. Embassy Jakarta and U.S. Mission to ASEAN. Welcome to At America. We are really honored to welcome all of you. And our audience today, from Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia and Universitas Pelita Harapan. Exclusive at AT America, an open dialogue on the U.S. in the Indo-Pacific with Deputy Secretary of State. Stay tuned until the end to hear the discussion about the strength of the U.S. Indonesia bilateral relationship. And now to begin our event, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chargé d'Affaires of the U.S. Embassy Jakarta, Michael F. Klein. There you go, Pa.
Patricia, thank you very much for inviting me back here. It's wonderful to be here. Anyone here for the first time tonight? Everybody almost. Wow, where have you been? This is it's a great space. It's like our living room, and it's a place where we could have candid conversations about anything. And tonight we're going to be talking a lot about the Indo-Pacific because this month we're celebrating our second anniversary of the Indo-Pacific strategy. And this is a big deal for us because it's a strategy in which the United States makes crystal clear our commitment to the most dynamic region in the world. It makes clear our commitment and our vision of a free and open and connected and resilient and safe and secure Indo-Pacific. And it makes clear as day that relationships matter. And it's a relationship with ASEAN, for example, as it underscores our commitment to ASEAN centrality, and it underscores our commitment to Indonesia and our commitment to the U.S. Indonesia relationship, which matters a lot. And we saw that all through the G20, we saw that through the East Asia Summit, and we saw it last November when President Jokowi went to the White House in Washington and elevated the relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership. And tonight, to help us understand the significance of all that, we have two very, very distinguished guests. And the first guest I'd like to invite to the stage is the founder of FPCI, former ambassador to the United States, distinguished academic, foreign policy expert, and friend to just about everybody, Dr. Dino Jalal, please. Welcome. Thank you. Have a seat. And our second guest tonight is not only the most senior State Department official to visit Indonesia since the signing or since the announcement of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, but he's also one of the most senior State Department officials, period. Our guest tonight is basically our COO of the State Department, who is at the table where every decision of consequence is made. He is a distinguished attorney, former ambassador to India, and currently our Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources. Please join me in welcoming Deputy Secretary Richard Verma. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Pa Richard Verma, and it's great to have you in Indonesia. I understand it's your first visit?
Yes, first visit. I have been all over the world, and I've been wanting to come here for a very long time. So I wish I was here for longer than 24 hours, but I'm just so happy to be here, and it's an honor to be with you. Thank you.
Okay, and what brings you to Indonesia?
So this is part of a longer trip. So we started the week actually in Fiji, and then we were in Australia, both in the capital city of Canberra and also in Sydney. and now here in Jakarta. And it's really part of what the Chargé said, our focus not only on the Indo-Pacific region, but on Southeast Asia and Indonesia in particular, which I have watched this relationship over many years, and I'm just so heartened and happy to see the relationship so strong and to have this comprehensive strategic partnership that the two leaders announced just a few months ago. This is a really exciting time to be here. I will also say it's, you know, when you open up the newspaper or turn on the TV these days, you can be distressed about what's going on in the world, which is understandable. But then when you think about the promise of what's actually happening in the Indo-Pacific region, half of the world's population, 60% of the economic growth, this incredible youth dividend that we see here represented in the room tonight. And then you think about, again, Southeast Asia, Pacific Islands, and Indonesia in particular, and you have great hope and great promise for the future. And that's why we're here, is to make sure we are doing what we need to do to support all of our diplomats and the programs and activities here.
Yeah, well, wish you all the best, and hope in the short time you have a great time. You leave tomorrow to Washington, D.C.,
Yes,
right?
back tomorrow night.
Yes, yes. And I mean, indeed, Indonesia and U.S. has very strong and rich relationships. I remember when President Obama came to Indonesia in 2010 for the visit, you know what he asked for? You know, we had prepared filet mignon, a steak, a burger, and fancy wine, and so on. And guess what he wanted at the state dinner? Bakso. Right, yeah. So, Emily, you may want to take Richard Verma to a bakso before he goes home. Yeah, yeah. Good. And you come from Washington, D.C., which is, I feel it, my hometown. I don't know if you know, I went to high school in the United States, in McLean. And my first job, Richard, was as a dishwasher at the embassy, where 30 years later, I became ambassador at that same building. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So my dad tells a great story about arriving in the United States. We're first generation family. Tells a great story about arriving in the United States in 1963 with $14 and a bus ticket.
Is that right?
And nothing else. Now, we've heard that story so many times. Sometimes he has $22, sometimes he has $14. But you get the idea. He started over with next to nothing, and then for his kid to go back and be ambassador to the country where he came from, that was kind of like winning the lottery, you know, but also a very American story. So we were super fortunate. I went, and he tells the story about standing in the consular line at the New Delhi embassy waiting for his visa to come to the United States, and how nervous he was, and how much he prepared, and how they traveled 300 miles to come to that visa interview. And I would always go out to the visa line probably once a month and meet with people. And I think this is what, and they were nervous and they had traveled far, and I thought this is exactly what my mom and dad went through. So your story is a great story. My parents' story is a great story, and I now tell it whenever I can.
They must be very proud of you. Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't go to medical school, so I think that was like the big disappointment. And it's funny, when I got nominated to be ambassador, a friend of mine called me and he said, maybe this is the one achievement where your parents will stop asking you to go to medical school. It wasn't true. We've been exceptionally fortunate. Again, a great immigrant story. They lived through a very tough time in India, through the India partition, through the independence movement. And frankly, when they left India in 1963, that was only, 16 years after Indian independence. So they didn't really know what was going to happen. I'll just tell you one other quick story. My mother and grandmother were both school teachers, and they were educated at a time when very few women in that part of the world were being educated and going off and teaching. And so they taught in a girls' school in a very impoverished area in Punjab. That girls' school is still there. I got to go back to that school as ambassador and saw where they taught, but a number of their students came out who were now 75, 80 years old. They squeezed my cheeks really hard, and they said, without your mother and grandmother, we would not be here today. They told us how important education was, and they made us study, and they made us stay in school, and they gave us the courage to stand up for ourselves. And it made me think about the incredible impact that one person here, my mother and my grandmother, can have on a generation of people. So when we think about service and public service and serving others, you know, sometimes you don't have to go abroad, you don't have to go work in the government. You can have a real impact on people's lives by being a school teacher, by being a good friend, or by being a neighbor. That was probably the most moving event I had as a professional in my lifetime, actually.
Well, listening to you, I want to ask if you agree with this observation I'm going to share with you, and I think you're going to like this. You know, there's so many Indians in top places now, right? I mean, Nikki Haley is running for president, right? Kamala Harris has an Indian background. Chairman of Microsoft is an Indian. The president of the World Bank is Indian, and so on and so on. There's just so many Indians doing well. The Prime Minister of Britain has an Indian background. But I hear it's because in the Indian DNA culture, there's an emphasis on the importance of learning, of education. Is that? Would you agree to that? Does that explain why so many Indians in excel?
So I would come home with my report card, you know, in 9th or 10th grade, and I would say to my dad, "Dad, I got all A's and an A minus," and he would come over to me and he said, "Son, let's talk about the A minus, okay?" So, no, look, I think there's this commitment to education and learning. I think we see that across the world. I think we see that across Asia. And so I don't know that it's unique necessarily to, I do think there's something about the immigrant story, whether you are, you know, like your family did or others, you know, you tend to really push yourself and your kids so that they can have a better life and a better future. And maybe that's part of it. But I look around this room and I see a lot of people who are probably working really hard each day and have a lot of great dreams for the future. So I don't know what the secret is.
You know what? I see this in my son as well, right? So when I was young, my dad would say, "Dino, study," right? And I said, "No, Dad, I want to play. I want to play football. I want to play basketball out there. I want to go, you know, just hang out with my friends," right? And my son now, who's applying to Georgetown, right? Hopefully he makes it. We'll see. But now if I say, "Hey, son, let's go play basketball," or something, he says, "No, Dad, I gotta study." Right? I don't know if you have this experience. But now let's go back to Indo-Pacific, the geopolitical fun foreign policy stuff. Right? Pat Richard, America is big on Indo-Pacific. And for us in Indonesia, when we talk about the Indo-Pacific and we come up with the ASEAN outlook on Indo-Pacific, we stress the term inclusive. Yeah. So for us in Indonesia, the inclusive part is quite vital to our conception of Indo-Pacific. I know Secretary Blinken have also referred to the term inclusive Indo-Pacific. Can you explain more about what that means from the mindset of U.S. foreign policy?
Well, look, I think there's I'll give you my interpretation. I think there's a geographic component of Indo-Pacific, and we think about, from the Indian subcontinent, the entire way across Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands. And so there's obviously inclusive in terms of the regional point of view. Then I think there's also inclusive about making sure that everyone is having the opportunity for the promise and the dreams to live up to what they have aspired to. So are people going to have the economic opportunity? Are people going to have the chance to be educated? Are they going to have the jobs of the future? Are they going to be able to work in new fields, in climate-related fields, or in cybersecurity, or in new scientific discoveries, critical minerals, so many others. So I guess I think of inclusive as making sure people aren't left behind. This is particularly important for democracy and how we think about what people feel about democracy. And I think one thing we are seeing around the world is some democratic retrenchment, some rise of authoritarian leaders or authoritarian messages because their argument is democracy didn't work. And look at all these people who have been left behind. So when we think about inclusive growth, inclusive democratic struggles, inclusive Indo-Pacific, this is, again, my view, it is about lifting everybody up, giving everyone a chance, bringing all kinds of people into our modern economic, political system so that they feel respected and heard as well.
Okay. But Richard, this is going to be a very interesting year to 2024, given all the things that are happening with all the turbulence and conflicts around the world. And I think I'm not wrong in saying that many countries in the global south are beginning to question the world international order. Yeah. And many, including in Indonesia, are saying, look, there's full of inconsistencies and double standards, right? And obviously that's not good because we want an international order that is accepted to all and supported and defended by all. Yeah. You have any comment on that?
Look, I think the international order is actually under great strain, and so there's a lot going on. Maybe try to unpack this a little bit. I think we have more countries competing for power on the world stage than we've ever had before. I think there are a number of countries and people who feel like the 20th century, the rules of the 20th century were written for the victors of World War II and the countries that had the biggest militaries necessarily. And they say, okay, well, why are there 5 seats on the permanent seats on the UN Security Council? Why is kind of the trade system organized the way it is? And so they're saying this is the century actually for us to redraw some of the rules and rewrite some of the architecture. And that's a natural thing. So whether you call this the global south standing up, or whether you just call this a natural correction, I'm not sure I know the answer to it. We also still have, we still have conflict in the world, and significant conflict, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, or the Middle East, or significant civil disturbances brought on by a variety of factors, whether it's climate change. I think of the 100 million people that are displaced around the world and from their homes. And so this architecture is under great strain. And we have to make sure we actually adapt this architecture to make sure people's voices are heard, back to being inclusive again. So, from our perspective, from a U.S. perspective, we want more partners. We want more people to come into this rules-based order, into this architecture. That's, back to this relationship, why it's so important and so signature for, 300 million people to be supporting the kind of rules-based architecture that is important to the people of Indonesia, important to the people of the United States, and hopefully important and worth preserving for the vast majority of citizens of the world. It is under threat. There are different visions, and so we have to stand up for it. We have to stand up for it with our ideas. We have to stand up for it through deterrence and military means. We have to stand up for it through economic means. So, complicated time in the world. Again, I think you can look at this situation in the world and be very depressed about it, or you can be hopeful about the opportunities that are out there, and knowing that we're all going to have to continue to work at this. We've been working at our democratic experiment in the United States since 1789. We declared independence in 1786. Our Constitution was formalized in 1789. Our journey has been very uneven, has been very imperfect, and as President Obama used to remind us, and President Biden does today, you know, we're still working to form a more perfect union, and that is a struggle, and it is a struggle that continues. Proud of the U.S. leadership role, proud of what, again, this partnership I think can bring in not only in this part of the world but globally.
Okay. Pat Richard, Michael said earlier that now we have between Indonesia and the U.S. a comprehensive and strategic partnership that was signed by President Jokowi and President Biden when our president went to the White House. For us in Indonesia, you know, this is a big deal. I remember there was a time when I was working as a diplomat where there was an idea to strike a partnership with the United States, and the response was, no, we're not ready yet, right? Because the U.S. is a superpower, and there was just a little bit of complex about embracing the United States. And the comprehensive strategic partnership, it's really a big leap for us in terms of our relationship. I guess my question to you, I mean, students always ask this, what does that mean, you know, comprehensive strategic partnership? And my simple answer is that, well, you know, we're no longer just friends. We are boyfriends and girlfriends, something like that, right? But from the U.S. perspective, I know you always talk about allies, and we're not allies, right? Because we don't have a treaty alliance system. But what does that mean to be a CSP, a comprehensive strategic partner of the United States?
Yeah. No, I like that, the boyfriend, girlfriend. I'll have to use that when I go back. Look, just back to my 20th century, 21st century analogy, you know, the treaty alliance framework was very much something born of the last century. When we come to this century, we very much want to meet countries where they are. And this is the kind of agile, I think, smart way in which we recognize not just transactional relationships, right? This isn't just about buying and selling things. This is about relationships that are fundamentally built upon shared values of democracy, inclusion, diversity, resolving disputes peacefully, freedom of navigation, you know, this kind of notion of living in the world peacefully. So we are bound together by shared values, our two peoples. And that you can see that represented by the number of Indonesian students that are in the United States. You see that in our exchange programs. You see that, frankly, in this room today. Those shared values are really the glue that holds us together. It's up to the governments then to now build upon that kind of glue that the people have. I think the people are actually pushing the government leaders, saying, now take us to the next level, comprehensive strategic partnership. It is up to us to now explain to all of you what that actually means in our various categories. So I'll just take a few examples. So our defense relationship, you know, our two ministers of defense have met. We are talking about deepening our cooperation. We're already, I think, the leading provider in defense exercises and training. We are going to do more of that, increase our maritime domain awareness, our awareness of what's happening around us, about building up capabilities and deepening that partnership, I think, is really important. In the economic sphere, I think our two-way trade numbers are around 50 billion, maybe 47 billion last year. That's good. I think what we're trying to do is figure out how to do much more. I think given that we're the third most populous country, I think you're the fourth most populous country, I think that two-way trade number could be much higher. It is up to us to talk about what can we do from a trade perspective to bring down barriers even further and create even more economic opportunity. There's already some 6,000 U.S. companies in Southeast Asia that contribute about $500 billion to two-way trade. So I think more can be done here in the economic basket. Climate change, helping you and helping you, frankly, you can help us with this transition so that we can stop this kind of race to increase higher temperatures around the world that's creating such devastation. So climate and clean energy, cybersecurity, global health. We've all lived through this terrible pandemic. What can we do together to work on advances and create even more global health security? I'm just giving you a few examples of what a comprehensive strategic partnership is really about. And it's really up to our people and our peoples together with our government representatives really negotiating this out. And I understand the framework for this should be ready soon. So stay tuned for that. But I think that'll be really exciting. And then it'll give the leaders here, it'll give the populations in both countries a sense of where we're going. Frankly, I think people should measure us and hold us accountable for progress. And then, you know, we can then build on it and adapt and see where we need to take it from there. But that's how I think about what that comprehensive strategic partnership means. And we don't have it with every country in the world. And so I think it is something very special. And I think it represents kind of the important place that we are at in this relationship. And we've had good relationships over decades, 75th year, I think, of our diplomatic relations. Again, I'm not sure I've ever seen the relationship this strong, this robust, this deep, and now it's up to us to take us to the next level.
You also have a comprehensive partnership with ASEAN, yeah? Apart from Indonesia, and that's also a big thing, yeah. Can you explain how does Indonesia and ASEAN fit into the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy? Yeah.
Yeah, so the strategy, again, the strategy is about all of these components I was talking about, whether it's defense or trade or people-to-people ties or, you know, again, climate or health, so many other areas. The strategy is also about architecture. And what I mean by architecture is groupings of like-minded nations that come together to advance common principles and priorities. And, you know, no better example of that than ASEAN. And you look at the incredible progress that's been made over the last few decades in ASEAN and the ASEAN member countries. And this is where there is so much promise for the future in terms of innovation and discovery and economic opportunity. And also security issues and setting standards about how we want the future to be. 20 years ago, we really were not having a discussion about cybersecurity or the digital economy or rules of the road on information in the kind of internet world that we all live in today. 25 years ago, we really weren't having a conversation about the impacts of climate change, right? So ASEAN can be this incredibly powerful forum where we bring, again, like-minded countries together to help solve some of the challenges that we're facing. So I see this recognition of ASEAN in that comprehensive strategic frame in the same manner.
Yeah. Well, I want to remind everybody here that we're very lucky to be living in this region. I was just in Europe, and there's war going on in Europe. Yeah, there's war going on in the Middle East, right? In South Asia, SARC, which is an attempted regional organization, is having problems because India and Pakistan just don't get along, right? So I think what we have, the stability, the progress, the unity of ASEAN is really something that we should value and not take for granted.
100% agree.
Yeah. But Richard, you spoke about your trip is meant to discuss safe and secure cyber. What do you call it? Cyberspace. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about this? Why cybersecurity and cyber diplomacy is important?
Yeah. Look, let me maybe take a step back again and talk about where we are on technology a little bit. And we all walk around now with these supercomputers in our hands that are incredibly empowering and liberating. You talked about your son. I have 3 teenagers, and they, basically are stuck with this device in their hand all day. So the technology has changed dramatically, and I think about all of the good that can come from that technology. People who can enter the digital economy, people who have never had a bank account before, right? They have their phone, and they can get paid. They can sell their products in a way. I remember in India, we would work with these craftspeople who actually couldn't read or write, but they would take an iPad and they could sell their goods to people around the world based on being able to be connected in a way they weren't before. So technology can educate, it can liberate, it can empower people, it can give people strength they haven't had before, connect up people in ways they haven't before. It can give us the ability to analyze data, so much more. Technology for good. There are also risks to technology, and there are malign actors who want to misuse technology. They want to use technology to surveil. They want to use technology to misinform. They want to use technology to harass. They want to use technology to steal, right? And so we have to be aware of that risk as well. And I think we are aware of the risk, but I don't think we have yet set the kind of global standards that we need on rules of the road. So we are trying to do that in our cyber diplomacy. We have a new an ambassador for cyber diplomacy who I was traveling with, both to Fiji and to Australia, where we were not only talking about cyber diplomacy, we're also talking about cyber security and making sure that the networks we're using, that the data that you are providing into these devices is secure and that there are trusted partners. And you can do that both through principles and rules, and frankly, you can just do that through really smart infrastructure and hardware. So, for example, when we were in Fiji, we were talking about the importance of undersea cables and connecting up many of the Pacific Islands through undersea cables, which delivers a degree of trusted connectivity that doesn't exist today. So that's why I think cybersecurity and technology used in a positive way is so important. But this is a real cutting edge issue. I think a lot of the people in this room are going to have to be working on, because we're at the beginning of this journey. We're certainly not in the middle or the end of it. And so, because also the technology is changing so fast, I didn't even mention artificial intelligence. The State Department actually has a very forward-leaning policy on artificial intelligence, but we are still moving somewhat cautiously so that we do this right. And so we're going to need all of your help and and intelligence and intuition about how to do this. So doing it together and working on cyber together, and that will be a plank of our comprehensive strategic partnership.
Yeah. But Richard, talking about technology, I asked once my wife a question, and I asked her, look, if you have to go 1 week in a remote island, what do you want to bring with you? Me, your husband, or a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
And I think you all know the answer.
She chose her husband, right?
No,
Yeah. Oh.
no. Unfortunately, no. And I can't be with my kids on a dinner and have a full conversation, right? I think you know what I'm talking about. Do you see the danger of technology eroding the human soul somehow, changing human soul? Yeah.
Sure. Look, I have the same experience with our 16-year-old twins who are pretty attached to technology. So yes, I think we don't yet know some of the risks. Well, we know that they can actually, that there can be bullying, cyberbullying, there can be addictions to kind of the screen. And so I just think we have to balance and educate ourselves. We've jumped into this field and into the software and into the hardware and into the devices without probably fully appreciating how to manage this the right way. We're taking the advantages it brings with the new information and the education, and I do think there's probably still much more we have to do in setting up the guardrails.
I want to ask students to raise their hands if you have questions, but let me ask you this while they're thinking about the questions. We just had the most unpredictable catastrophe to the world, which is COVID-19. I mean, when it came in 2020, by the end of 2019, nobody really thought there would be a virus that would just cause so many lives and destruction. Yeah. I'm just wondering, do you think the next catastrophe the world will face will be cyber-related?
Wow, I get to predict something really that I don't know the answer to that, right? So, and I agree with you about the incredible harm and damage that this global pandemic caused to millions and millions of people. I will say we learned so much from it. We learned, frankly, how badly the international cooperation was, how every country had different standards, different testing. Our supply chains all of a sudden dried up because here we were interconnected in the world, and the trade stopped. So we just have to work together much more closely, because whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a global cyber virus, I don't know. I just think these are problems that our Director of Intelligence in the United States calls problems without passports, right? Problems that a military cannot stop, problems that you can't intimidate, but problems that really are only solved through international cooperation. So back to ASEAN, back to the United Nations, back to leadership from Indonesia and the United States, we actually have to be sitting down with our friends and partners and around the world to be thinking about how do we cooperate closely so that we are ready for that next problem, whether it is in the biological sphere or in the cyber domain, wherever it happens to be. That is the only way I think we can be ready for it, is through international cooperation and understanding.
Okay, thank you. Questions, hands? Okay, John, I'll take three first, yeah? You, and then Ibu Susi, who is our America expert, and somebody over there? Okay, I want to take the lady, yeah? Okay, so three questions, and just one question. I don't want one A, B, C, D, yeah? All right, please. And state your name and where you're from, yeah.
Hi, Deputy. First of all, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight and visiting our great country. So my name is Victor. I grew up here, but I went to school in the States as well. So I guess my question is, with the rising tension between China and the United States, especially in the industry of high tech and semiconductors, which definitely will affect ASEAN in this region, right? For example, like the ban of NVIDIA chips, China. So is there any commitment from the United States or initiatives in terms of investing these high tech or high value chain industry like semiconductors or data centers in Indonesia? Thank you.
And then, do you mind if we take three?
No.
Okay, Susie?
I can't promise to remember every aspect of every question.
I'm Susie Sudarman. I'm just going to question about the leap from shared values to strategic comprehensive partnership.
Yeah.
Because the biggest mystery, I think it's in my country, there seems to be an invisible borders. There's so many propaganda against the U.S. that the shared values that could be shared with the people are confused by these different venues of communications. And I wonder if that is going to be a problem that you will address as you are leaping through strategic partnership, or would you just leave it as it is?
Can I just
Yeah,
ask
please,
you,
yeah.
is that kind of misunderstanding, where is that coming from?
Propaganda
Here or from us?
from Indonesian regime. Okay. Before I left in July, there was a lot of propaganda against America trying to destroy our election and have their own candidates. And it goes on and on and on. And I was in Washington, D.C. and tried to dig into this, and nobody cares about Indonesia.
It's called conspiracy theories, and there's plenty of it in Jakarta. I think you can answer the two questions first.
Okay, we'll take these two. So, so the short answer is yes. So look, we have a very intense competition with China. We will cooperate where we can, whether it's on climate or on non-proliferation. But we will also compete and compete vigorously. And back to kind of trusted in technologies and secure, we believe very strongly in that. So in the semiconductor and chip space in particular, this is a very important area of cooperation. And we've talked about this in our bilateral partnership. I know the two leaders talked about it when they met in November, and there's a lot more to come on this front. I think it's a very exciting and promising area, and a lot more work in this space. So yes, we will absolutely be doubling down on the advanced technology discussion, the critical minerals discussion that is very much related to that as a kind of very much needed in the overall supply when it comes to chips. So it's very much connected. This is I mean, you know, maybe this gets back to a little bit of the misinformation and the technology space, and I think we have to somehow, all of us have to figure out a way to reduce the noise in our lives and focus on trusted sources of information, whether that's news in print or TV or internet. So, you know, making sure we're getting accurate information, again, trusted, and sometimes, you know, whether, you know, on our devices, the first thing that comes over, it triggers this reaction, and you start, oh, well, could this be true? Could this, you know, really be the case? And so this is a risk about what's happening in some of the electronic spaces in particular, but also in America and on talk radio and on TV. And so we have to get back to kind of those values that we have. And I don't know. I see the shared values between us. I've seen it over many years develop even stronger, and it is now about delivering for the people of both of our countries. Because if it's all just rhetoric, if it's all just talk, then we actually will lose people, and they won't necessarily believe in the relationship. So now we all have some work to do to prove those naysayers wrong. I'm not hearing the propaganda about this relationship where I sit. So, but I'm also, I don't get out very much, unfortunately.
Can I just make one comment on that? Look, this is a new terrain for our diplomacy and foreign relations. Just one example, if I were to say something just reasonable and analytical about a foreign policy issue or U.S. Indonesia relations, probably get 1,000 hits. But somebody else, and you know who, will say something totally rubbish but sensational, and he or she gets 2 million hits, right? So that's the new terrain. It wasn't there a decade ago, but that's the challenge for Emily and Jason in terms of public diplomacy. How do you deal with that? You can't go sensational because that's not you. I can't do that because it's not responsible. But the people who are getting the microphone and getting millions of hits are those who say outrageous things, right?
Good thing we don't have that in our country at all. Yeah, right.
I'll take the lady up there. Yeah. The one that was raising her hand. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I think I would like to ask the topic the most tickle me. It's about technology. So I think it's already common knowledge that we all know children or students in this era are more smarter, getting smarter. But they getting smarter because they get that technology access. But I heard that when you talk about technology change human soul, so when we want to become educators later, what should we do so that our students not getting that bad soul because of that technology? So their soul not change into a negative way, but they can use technology to improve their self, like they getting more new skills or etc. How should we do as the educators or as parents later, maybe? Thank you.
Yeah, over to me. Yeah. No, look, I think we're all trying to learn this together a little bit, right? About this conversation we were just having about how much technology is too much technology for little kids or teenagers or college kids or even, older folks, let's say, like me. And we're trying to find that balance. I think there's incredible value to the technology we have today in learning things that we've never been able to learn before, seeing things, discovering things, getting skills that we haven't had before. But again, we have to set up those guardrails, those constraints. Some of that is going to be within families and how you set your own rules for within how you're living your life or your children's lives. But some of that has to be done by governments. And that's the domain that we are trying to navigate. And again, I think we have some principles. They are about trust and transparency and openness and confidence in the system and not misuse of people's data or exploiting or, again, harassing or surveilling. So we do have some principles, and we think they are super important. It is a matter now of trying to ensure those principles actually are adopted not only by countries but by the companies from those countries, so that we are building that kind of trust in the system. Because right now there are too many malign actors, there are too many countries using technology for wrongful purposes. So again, this is maybe a spectrum of responsibilities. Some of them are going to be personal responsibilities, and some of them are going to fall to the public sector. And that's, I know this is what we are important conversation that we're not only having bilaterally, but we're having it within our ASEAN member states as well.
I can take two more questions. I can take one from there, the gentleman on the second row, and the lady in the back. But the gentleman first. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Izul. Thank you for the time. I've read your book about the art of leading, Pak Dino, from your view of your spokesperson of SB at that time. Mr. Vice State Director, thank you for being here. It's very nice to have you here in Indonesia.
Thank you.
I'm a student in International University Islam Indonesia. I'm currently working on a research project regarding the U.S. AUKUS, Australia, UK, and the U.S. And it's very interesting, and I get good grade from it. But I have a question regarding the non-proliferation treaty, because there are many parties that hesitating about U.S. will violate or not the non-proliferation treaty along with the alliance, because there is a nuclear powered submarines for the Australia. How does U.S., UK convince all of the parties in the world that it wants to bring peace from that submarines and there is no violation on that SSN? Thank you.
Yeah, and can I answer that first? So I think what he's talking about is this this new treaty that we have called AUKUS between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States about actually delivering nuclear-powered submarines and that capability to the Australians, but also delivering advanced defense and technological cooperation as well. So there's two pillars. Pillar one is the nuclear subs, and pillar two is about the advanced defense and technology cooperation. The non-proliferation concerns we take exceptionally seriously. We think we will be in full compliance with our treaty obligations, with the Australian treaty obligations as well. That was an essential requirement to this treaty. And I will say, if you just look at the UK and the U.S. record on non-proliferation when it comes to our nuclear-powered submarines, these subs have traveled hundreds of millions of miles over decades, literally. And we have lived very faithfully and truthfully to our non-proliferation obligations, and we take it quite seriously. And that was in our agreement with the Australians, which they have been very committed to living up to. So I feel actually quite strongly and quite confidently that we'll live up to our NPT obligations and any other non-proliferation obligation we have.
Okay. Last question from the lady. Yes. Yang di tengah yang angkat tangan itu. There you go. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity, Pak Dino and Mr. Richard. I would like to straightforward. I think your personal experiences that you said before, you came from India, and we know India in South Asia, it has historical culturally with the state of Bangladesh and then Pakistan also. I'm curious, how does, regarding your track record, you're also experiencing internally displaced and anything, how does it shape your perspective on seeing security principles until you became a representative of the United States?
Let me just make sure I understand the question. How does my experience with
really shape? I'm sure it will. It's all exchange and translate your perspective on how you see peace and security.
Yeah, you're talking about my own family's experience.
Yes,
oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate that. You know, I will say my wife's family, too, lived through a very tough time. Through her grandparents lived through World War I. They were Armenian. They lived through the Armenian genocide. Again, my mother was a refugee. My father, this product of the colonial kind of experience. So, yeah, absolutely shapes my view of the world, shapes how we think about building stable democratic systems. It makes me think about how we're handling, again, the 100 million people who are displaced, either because of war or because of climate or because of gangs or because of just economic despair, and how we're treating people and the need to and importance of treating people humanely and finding lawful pathways for them to migrate if there is an ability to do that. So I think about that because of my mother's own experience as a refugee. I think about giving people a chance and what it means to actually support people who might be going through a tough time or a new experience. And I think about my own parents' experience in the United States and how they were welcomed into communities, and we easily could have failed. And I would not be sitting here talking to all of you, but a lot of people lifted them up. They worked really hard. And I made a lot of mistakes over the last few decades, and a lot of people stuck with me as well. So I think about it from the global perspective and what countries do, and then I also just think about it from a more human perspective. And now, as a senior official in the State Department, we have 80,000 people around the world, and really my job is to make sure those people are well taken care of and they have what they need, and we're there for them during hard times too. And these are hard times for a lot of folks. So yeah, my personal upbringing and my family's history shapes a lot of, probably, the vast majority of how I act and think today. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you.
Actually, if you don't mind me, final question. You manage human resources and management in the State Department. The U.S. has one of the world's largest budget for diplomacy, and I think, right? And you have extensive diplomatic presence all over the world. I think more so than any other country. From your standpoint, what do you think is the most important trait or character of an American diplomat, right? What would that be, right? I have my answer for Indonesian, obviously, but for what is that for American diplomat?
I think it's well, I don't know if it's one thing. I think it's several things, and there are some real great diplomats sitting here in the front, so maybe they should answer this question. I think it's curiosity about the world. I think it's respect for other cultures, traditions, people. It's problem solving. It's kind of, I think, a love for the international system and different languages and different traditions. And I think all of those things go into being a good diplomat, and maybe the model of just kind of sitting back and writing interesting memos that you send to Washington. I think that's a part of the job, but I think very successful diplomats in our system today are out engaging with people and really not only representing the best of the United States, but learning so much from all those people they interact with, and that's what makes I think our system really cool and a great profession to be in. And I've been in this particular job for 10 months. I've been to 30 of our embassies and consulates around the world in a fairly short period of time. And people ask me, why are you traveling so much? One, to get out of Washington. But two, you come back very inspired by meeting all of the people that work in our embassies and consulates and our locally employed staff, our civil servants, our foreign servants, our contractors. And so I come back with a kind of commitment to do even more to help a lot of really, really dedicated people ultimately trying to make the world a better place.
Well, let's give a big hand to Richard Verma. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next time, please stay longer. Go to Bali, go to Jogja.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And
I will
enjoy
do
the
that.
rest of Indonesia. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. For our moderator, founder and chairman Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, Dr. Dino Patijala. Can we give a big round of applause? And of course, to our eminent speaker, Deputy Secretary of State for Management and Resources, U.S. State Department, Richard R. Verma. Can we give a big round of applause? Once again, Thank you so much, everyone. We hope from this insightful discussion, we'll strengthen the U.S. Indonesia partnership in the following years. The last, you can follow our social media to keep updated for our next amazing events here in America. We have on Instagram, Facebook, X, YouTube, AT America. With that, thank you so much for joining with us. My name is Patricia Elizabeth, and see you at the next At America events. Bye.